Years, that story has been a favorite in the Kimbrough household. I first received the book from members of the District Youth Council in Fort Worth in the late 70s. And I've shared that story through the years with our children and other children in church families from Texas to Alaska to Idaho and now Oregon. And it comes with the warmest personal regards from the young people who first shared it with me. This narrative of Shel Silverstein's would be a wonderful gift for any person in your family. The book is entitled The Giving Tree. And all kinds of children have loved it and tried to live it for generations now. But like so many noteworthy works, this tiny volume is for children of all ages, like all of us. This is the story of a tree that was great and very special. She was special not because she was so tall that she reached high into the clouds like the evergreens of the coastal forest. She was special not because her trunk was so large that cars could be driven through the belly, like in California. She was special not because she possessed certain kinds of leaves and particular fruit that could be found nowhere else. She was a common, everyday apple tree. No, this tree was special because she gave so much of herself away. No matter what her friend, the boy, needed, the tree was always willing to share. And eventually, she gave herself entirely away in love. And in the end, the beautiful tree was nothing more than an old stump. However, as a result of the sincere devotion to the boy, which has prompted her to give so much away, she had more stature as a stump than she had known in her days as a tall, stately tree. In fact, the tree really had no stature at all until she became a stump. Until she was more committed to giving herself away to others than expecting others to give of themselves to her. Biblically speaking, greatness is that moment when you move from preserving your life in spite of those around you, serving through your life in response to the needs of all those around you. And in this context, genuine stature can be discovered in the strangest of ways. That is true of stumps that used to be trees, and with outgiving, generous people who used to be ingrown, stingy people. This conversation that takes place from the Gospel of Mark this morning proclaims exactly the same message, but in a decidedly different setting. Obviously, James and John want to be considered great, probably the greatest. Such is a very human goal. Their dilemma, though, is that they want to be great in contrast to the dreams of others rather than great because they live in response to the needs of others. They crave the greatness of distinction as opposed to the greatness of discipleship. We don't want to be the only ones in your kingdom, they assure the Galilean. We only want from you the very best seats in the house so that we can watch over all the other lesser mortals. James and John seem more concerned about sitting at the side of Jesus than serving in the name of Jesus. They are the epitome of self-made men, which is why one wise layperson suggested makes them the perfect example of unskilled labor. No wonder Jesus' words both startle and frighten them. Whoever would be great among you, Jesus says, you must be their servant, and whoever would be first among you must be slave of all. He says so directly that each is able to hear, though neither is prone to listen. There is one sentence that is both the ground rule for being great and the context for being Christian. The more we give ourselves away as servants to our neighbors, the more of ourselves we are able to find because of what we share in those relationships. That message is so strange in our day and time. We're tempted to leave it bound between the front and back cover of a children's story. After all, it does sound like make-believe. Who, in their right mind, would seek greatness through uncontrolled giving? Who, with her head screwed on right, would risk losing what she's built up for herself simply for the purpose of helping those who have nothing of value to protect? No person with any kind of intellectual stability would ever consider such a notion. And perhaps that is why Jesus always sought to convict the heart rather than to try to convince the head. True Christian love, undying devotion to the spirit of being servants, will never be understood by the world. And yet, until those things, and those of us who are intrigued by Jesus are willing to follow Him all the way to the cross on that hill, the world will not be transformed by the power and distinction of such pure love. No sooner than Jesus had chided James and John for their egotistical demands than He traveled to Jerusalem and died on a cross made from a tree that had been cut down. And it was at that moment, hanging from that tree, that Jesus showed the world what it meant to be truly great. He whose forerunners had referred to Him as coming from the stump of Jesse was greater than any ruler sitting on any throne in any nation. He was Lord over all precisely because He had become the servant of all. He showed us greatness attained through service offered and demonstrated. What happened to Him on that cross will no doubt happen to us in ours. When we take that step to embrace those who seem unembraceable, when we attend more and participate more and pledge more and give ourselves more than even the church asks, when we donate blood or tissue or organs to give someone else life and health and wholeness, and even when we risk shedding a little blood for the sake of protecting another person's life and dignity. Of course, the examples can change, but the truth stands firm before us. The road that leads toward greatness always stops at some kind of cross. You and I are followers of that Galilean, descendants of that stump, and if faithful, are bound to be hung in one way or another on a tree at Calvary. Everyone wants to be great, of course. But this morning, we're called to reflect upon on whose terms. There's an old hymn in our hymnal by Earl Marlett. It confronts us with a faithful response. How will we answer? Are ye able, said the Master, to be crucified with me? Yea, the sturdy dreamers answered, the death we follow thee. Amen.